Let me ask you something dangerous. What if I told you the real reason they disrespect you is because you taught them to, not with words, not even with actions, but with your silence, with every time you swallowed your truth to avoid conflict, with every time you smiled through the insult, laughed when it hurt, agreed when your soul screamed no. You trained them to treat you like you don't matter. And now, they don't fear losing you, because you don't fear losing them. That is where it all begins. This is the truth no one tells you. Not your teachers, not your parents, not your polished self-help books. Until you respect yourself with precision, with pride, with steel in your spine, nobody else will. Not your partner, not your boss, not your so-called friends, not the world. Because the world doesn't see you for who you are. It sees you for what you tolerate. And every time you bend, every time you flinch, every time you water yourself down to fit into someone else's comfort zone, you reinforce your own invisibility. Respect isn't given. It's extracted. If you've ever sat there in the quiet, wondering why people ignore your value, it's because they can feel what you don't even admit to yourself, that you haven't decided you're worth protecting. And here's the forbidden truth nobody wants you to hear. People treat you exactly how you've trained them to. And if you don't build the spine to say enough, to draw the line, to walk away when it costs you comfort, then the world will shape you into a background character in your own life. A utility. A placeholder. Useful until replaced. Now let me take you back to the moment it started. Maybe you were 10, maybe 15, maybe it was yesterday. And someone, a teacher, a parent, a lover, a so-called friend, they laughed at your vulnerability. They humiliated your ambition. They crushed your voice with their sarcasm. And something inside you said, maybe I'm not enough. So you stopped trying to be seen. You started avoiding confrontation. You trained yourself to shrink, just enough to avoid being a threat. And the more you shrank, the more they stepped over you like furniture. But here's the thing, that wasn't the end. That was your origin story. Of someone who could either drown in their own silence or rise. So let's get into it. Respect begins the moment you become dangerous to lose. Most people walk through life begging to be accepted. They say yes when they mean no. They stay silent when they should speak. They apologize for simply existing. They play small, hoping someone will finally notice them. But here's the paradox. The more you beg to be included, the more invisible you become. Because respect is never earned by being liked. It's earned by being necessary, and yet never needy. You want people to take you seriously? Then walk away from one situation where you've been undervalued. Just once. Leave a relationship where you're used. Quit a job where you're spoken down to. Block the number of someone who only remembers you when they need something. And watch what happens. The moment you stop chasing, they start watching. Because now they feel something they've never felt before when it comes to you. Fear. The fear of losing you. The fear of realizing you no longer need their approval to exist. That's when respect begins. Because you're not proving your worth through noise. You're proving it through your absence. They will feel the void you leave like a missing limb. You want to be respected? Become the one who can disappear and still dominate the room you're no longer in. Let's go deeper. You cannot expect others to value what you constantly discount. Think about this. If you walked into a store and saw a luxury Rolex watch labeled for $80, would you be excited? No. You'd assume it's fake, broken, worthless. Because nothing truly valuable comes without cost. And you're no different. If you give your time, your loyalty, your creativity, your energy to people who haven't earned it, who don't value it, who give you crumbs in return, you become the Rolex at the garage sale. Pretty, but clearly not the real thing. But here's what changes everything. The moment you decide your time has a price. The moment you demand respect in silence, not in begging. The moment you raise your standards, not just for others, but for yourself, everything shifts. You stop entertaining nonsense. You stop chasing people who never had the capacity to see you. And without saying a word, your presence starts speaking volumes. People can feel when you've become untouchable. When you've bled for your own evolution. When you've seen the darkness and made peace with it. Not by escaping it, but by becoming the one who walks through it without fear. You don't have to scream. You don't have to explain. You don't have to prove anything. Because your energy, the way you move, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, becomes a silent weapon. Respect isn't earned through performance. It's demanded by presence. But presence only comes when you've suffered. When you've faced yourself in the mirror, broken, betrayed, hollow, and didn't flinch. That's why so few people ever radiate it. Because most people would rather be liked than respected. They would rather be agreeable than be sovereign. But not you. You didn't come here to be tolerated. You didn't wake up to be someone's afterthought. You came here to become unforgettable. So ask yourself, when you walk into a room, do they feel your soul before you speak? Do they feel the unshakable weight of someone who knows what they're worth, who refuses to beg, who would rather walk alone than sit in the comfort of mediocrity? Or do they feel someone who can be molded? Because that's the choice. And while most will never make it, you will. You already are. Because something inside you right now is waking up, and when that fire gets out, there's no putting it back. They will never respect you more than you respect yourself. So the question becomes, how deep are you willing to go? How much silence are you willing to break? How much of your old self are you ready to bury? Because the next truth, it doesn't just change your life. It rewrites your entire identity. And if you're still with me now, it means you're ready for it. Let's go deeper. Let's enter the fire. You're still here. Good. Because now we strip away the final mask. Let me tell you something most people spend their entire lives running from. The world doesn't care about your potential. It only responds to what you enforce. You could be brilliant, loyal, gifted, but if you don't enforce the way you're treated, you will be walked on. And not because people are evil, but because human nature is wired to test limits. To press, to poke, to find the weak spot. And if your boundaries have holes in them, if your energy says, you can disrespect me and I'll still show up, then that's exactly what you'll get. And here's the most brutal part of all. They'll do it with a smile. Not because they hate you, but because they don't fear the consequences of mistreating you. They know your forgiveness is automatic. They know your love is unconditional, even when it should be earned. They know you won't leave. And when they know that, you've already lost. Let's be real. You've probably been in that spot where someone kept taking from you time, attention, respect, affection. And every time you forgave it, every time you hoped they'd finally change, every time you stayed, you weren't being noble, you were being afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of your own power. Afraid of the silence that comes when you finally cut them off. But I need you to hear this, not with your ears, but with your soul. They will never change if there are no consequences. And you will never rise if you keep carrying people who are weighing down your throne. That brings us to the next truth. You do not get what you deserve. You get what you require. Read that again. This world is not designed to reward passivity. It doesn't care how long you've been nice, how hard you've tried, how much you've tolerated. It cares about what you require of it. And most people, they require nothing. They go through life with open hands and closed mouths, always hoping, always waiting, always wondering why they keep getting less than they give. But the game doesn't work that way. Life mirrors your standard, not your suffering. The moment you demand more, not through begging, not through shouting, but through the way you walk, speak, and withdraw, the world starts to bend. But first, you have to stop giving discounts on your identity. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop over-delivering for people who wouldn't bleed for you. Stop watering dead gardens and calling it loyalty. Because every time you lower your standard to keep someone in your life, you teach your nervous system that disrespect is acceptable. And your body starts to believe it. Your mind starts to normalize it. You start losing track of who you were before you bent yourself into a shape that pleased everyone but you. So I'll say it again. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you require. If you require respect, and you enforce it, people adjust. If you require honesty, consistency, growth, and you don't flinch when someone falls short, people evolve or exit. And either one is a win. Because your throne was never meant for cowards. And here's the next scarred truth they don't want you to realize. You are not a victim of their treatment. You are a co-author. That's the gut punch. That's where most people check out. Because it's easier to blame the narcissist, the manipulator, the employer, the parent, the system. But when you look in the mirror, when you stop blaming and start owning, that's when you take back control. You realize it wasn't their lies that kept you stuck. It was your need to believe them. It wasn't their abuse that broke you. It was your decision to keep dancing in the fire, hoping the flames would soften. It was never about them. It was always about what you were willing to accept. And once you decide to accept less, they stop, or they leave, or they shatter. Either way, you win. Because you've stopped betraying yourself just to keep the peace. You've stopped editing your soul to be more palatable. You've stopped giving people a level of access they haven't earned. You've become dangerous to lose, and nothing commands respect more than that. Let me be even more blunt. There are people in your life right now who don't love you. They love your obedience. They love your silence. They love your availability, your validation, your softness, as long as it doesn't threaten their control. And the moment you start respecting yourself, setting boundaries, speaking up, not chasing, they'll call it selfish. They'll say, you've changed. They'll try to guilt you, shame you, pull you back into the old role. Not because they care about you, but because they miss the version of you they could manipulate. That version of you is dead. And now you're the one writing the rules. And the only people who'll stay are the ones who respect the new you. The ones who don't need you to shrink so they can feel tall. The ones who understand that power isn't aggression, it's discipline, restraint, presence. This is where you are now. The edge of transformation. And it's not cute. It's not inspirational. It's war. With every belief that told you to stay small. With every memory that said you're too much. With every person who used you, then blamed you for bleeding. But you are not a victim. You're not broken. You are the fire that survived the burn, and what you build from this place can't be touched. Not by their opinions, not by their silence, not by their absence. Because you're not fueled by validation anymore. You're fueled by vision. You're not chasing respect from others. You've become the source. And when you carry that, they feel it. They fear it. Or they follow it. But they no longer ignore it. Because your energy is no longer begging. It's declaring. You've stopped asking. You've started becoming. And that changes everything. You know what's terrifying to most people? A person who no longer needs validation is unstoppable. Because when you stop seeking permission to exist, to speak, to lead, you become something rare. You become sovereign. You become untouchable in ways most will never understand. And here's the irony. The same people who ignored you when you begged for approval, now they'll whisper your name with fear the moment you withdraw it. Because when you decide to respect yourself truly, with ferocity, with unapologetic clarity, you become a threat. Not because you harm others, but because you can no longer be controlled. You've burned the leash, you've removed the hooks, you've silenced the inner voice that said, just take it, just keep the peace, just be grateful. Now, you don't play by survival rules, you play to command. To own your time. To build your standards. To protect your energy like a king guards a kingdom wall. And once that shift happens, once your nervous system learns that it's safe to walk away, to say no, to disappoint people who don't deserve your presence, you change at a cellular level. You move differently. You stop rushing replies. You let silence work for you. You stop over-explaining. You let your energy answer the room. You stop over-giving. You choose wisely who earns what. And here's the beautiful, terrifying part. You'll lose people. Fast. The ones who only stayed because you were easy to manipulate, gone. The ones who only loved you because you bent your spine backwards for them, gone. And in that silence, in that space they leave behind, you will meet yourself. Not the watered-down version of you, not the agreeable shadow of you, but the real one, the version that remembers your vision, your edge, your power, the version that doesn't dilute itself for comfort or approval, the version that stands in a room full of masks and doesn't flinch. Because self-respect doesn't just change your relationships. It changes your walk, your posture, your presence. People start treating you like you're carved from something different. And it's not because you shouted louder, that it's because you no longer need them to clap. Let me be crystal clear. When you finally learn to respect yourself, you don't become arrogant. You become exact. You stop tolerating confusion. You stop explaining obvious disrespect. You stop waiting for people to value you the way you've begged to be seen. Because now you set the price. And if they can't afford your energy, you let them go bankrupt without guilt. That's the transformation. You become the source of your own validation. And that rewires your identity. It's not just about boundaries anymore, it's about essence. You don't have to say, I respect myself. You radiate it. It's in the way you don't chase. It's in the way you don't flinch when people walk away. It's in the way you walk into a room and speak second. Because you don't need to be heard just to feel seen. You are seen. Because your presence is undeniable. That's the price of this evolution. But let me warn you, there is grief here. There is death. The death of your old identity. The version of you that tolerated crumbs and called it a feast. The one who believed that playing small was safety. That version has to die. Because it was never you. It was a survival mask. A role you played to stay loved. But you've outgrown that cage. And once you respect yourself, truly, you will not fit where you used to shrink. Your old life will become too loud, too fake, too shallow. You'll feel it in your body when something doesn't align. And you won't be able to stay quiet anymore. Because now you have tasted power. Not dominance over others, but control over self. That's the final form of self-respect. That it's not a quote on a wall. That it's a decision you make every single day. That you not betray yourself for convenience. That you not apologize for your standards. That you not carry what they dropped. Guilt, shame, blame, just so they don't have to pick it up themselves. You've finally chosen you. Not out of revenge. Not out of rage. But out of recognition. You've remembered who you are. And when you remember who you are, you become the one thing they can't manipulate. Unshakable. That's when your entire reality shifts. People either rise to meet you or fall away from your frequency. And both outcomes are peace. Because you're no longer trying to win anyone over. You're just being. Completely. Sharply. Fully. And that's when you're dangerous. Because now you don't need their respect. You command it. Now listen closely. Because if you've made it this far, something inside you is already shifting. Not just your mindset, but your identity. The truth is, most people will never make it to this moment. They'll keep playing the game they were handed, smiling on command, shrinking for love, dying quietly while calling it a life. But not you. You came here because something in your soul refused to stay asleep, and now you've seen what was always there, buried under guilt and programming. You were never meant to be liked. You were meant to be respected. Not because you forced it, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. You see now that self-respect is not a performance. It's not loud. It's not decorative. It's a quiet war waged inside you. Every time you decide, I will no longer abandon myself. Not for love. Not for approval. Not for comfort. Not for anyone. Because once you abandon yourself, the world will follow. That's the secret Machiavelli understood. That power doesn't begin with conquest. It begins with sovereignty. With a man or woman who can look into the mirror and say, not with ego, but with conviction, I choose me. I choose the standard. I choose the throne. And if no one joins me at that altitude, so be it. Because kings don't beg. Warriors don't flinch. Strategists don't explain. They move. And that's what you've done. You've moved. From victim to architect. From pawn to player. From the one who waits to the one who commands. You've stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't give you a drop. You've stopped being impressed by chaos dressed up as passion. You've stopped mistaking proximity for loyalty. And now your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. People feel the shift. They see it in your silence. They feel it in your absence. They hear it in the things you don't say anymore, and that's power. Because the most dangerous person in the room is not the loudest. It's the one who knows what they bring, and isn't afraid to walk away. That's you now. And let me tell you something they'll never admit. The second you stop chasing respect is the moment people start giving it. Not out of kindness, out of recognition. Because they sense it, that unspoken energy that says, I don't need you to see my worth. I already do. That's the energy that shifts the room when you enter. That's the energy that bends outcomes in your favor. That's the energy that builds legacies, empires, and unshakable peace. But only when you earn it. And you earn it not by pretending to be perfect. You earn it every time you do what scared you. Every time you choose standards over attachment. Every time you walk away instead of begging. Every time you say no with your chest. Every time you stay grounded when chaos tries to pull you down. That is the real flex. Not money, not fame, not followers, but self-respect so sharp it cuts through manipulation like a blade. That's the aura that can't be faked, can't be borrowed, can't be bought. And you've started to wear it. Feel it? That rising pressure in your chest, that's not adrenaline. That's not ego. That's your soul remembering. That's your old self dying. That's your new self being born. Let them feel uncomfortable. Let them gossip. Let them mislabel your boundaries as arrogance. That's fine. They're not supposed to understand you. They're supposed to feel you, and they will. Because when you start moving like someone who refuses to be disrespected, the world watches. It studies you. It adjusts to you. It tests you, and then it follows you. Because confidence that comes from validation is cheap. But confidence that comes from pain, solitude, and rebirth, that's a different kind of flame. And now it's inside you. So let me leave you with this. Don't ever forget what it cost you to get here. Don't forget the nights you questioned your worth. Don't forget the tears you swallowed just to keep the peace. Don't forget how many times you chose others over yourself and how empty that made you. That version of you was necessary. But that version of you is done. Now you rise. You walk like your name is carved in stone. You speak like your voice rewrites the room. You choose like your soul is the compass. Not fear, not lack, not desperation. Because this is your empire, your time, your return, and anyone who can't respect that, let them watch you from the shadows they refuse to leave. Because the throne is not up for debate, and neither are you. If this message shook something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Drop a comment. Let it out. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe not just for content, but because you've decided to surround yourself with power. We're not here to be liked. We're here to lead. And leaders don't wait for permission, they move.